It's been nearly 10 years since comedy pioneer Rick Mayall died, and he was famous for roles in The Young Ones, Blackadder, Bottom, and a tribute's being planned in his memory.
So to mark the anniversary of his death this summer, a comedy festival is being set up in his hometown in Worcestershire. Our reporter Ben Sidwell has been to find out what to expect.
Now the Worcestershire town where he grew up wants to honour his memory with a brand new comedy festival.
This is the Norbury Theatre. This is our little auditorium.
It was here at his local theatre in Droitwich where Rick got his first taste of performing.
His parents were very, very involved here at the Norbury, and his mum and dad would direct and actually write shows and pantomimes. And the whole family got involved in performing on stage. And apparently, Rick's first role was on here as a little boy, running on stage at the end of Waiting for Godot.
So the story goes, as a small boy, Rick also used to operate the follow spots here at the theatre. Inside here, it's a bit of a tight squeeze. Now, this really couldn't have been very comfy for Rick, but I imagine it's where his love of theatre, and probably performing as well, all began.
My name's Kevin Turvey, and I'm an investigative reporter, which means I investigate...
The area where he grew up obviously influenced Rick.
Most of my work's based in Redditch.
One of his first comedy successes was with a character who lived just up the road from Droitwich.
Because that's where I live, you see.
A number of ideas for a tribute were discussed with Rick's family, including a statue, something at the theatre, or a comedy festival.
The family came back and said, we really like a festival because it keeps comedy alive. It puts a smile on people's faces, and Rick Mayall would have loved that people don't take life too seriously, that they can laugh at life.
And it's an idea people in the town seem to really like.
Brilliant idea. Because I was growing up on, brought up on The Young Ones and Bottom, and that he had a real influence on my youth. So, like, doing something to commemorate him, I think it's about time, because he's just a legend.
About time it was recognised. Lots of young people need to know, and it brings people into the town.
Yeah. You've done loads and loads of work for this, haven't you? And I haven't done anything. Nothing at all. Come on, test me.
This June is 10 years since Rick died. It's hoped the event can be officially launched to mark that anniversary before the comedy festival begins for real in 2025.
Flash by name, Flash by nature. Hooray!
Ben Sidwell, BBC News.
Where haven't I been?
There is a lot to celebrate in that career. We're joined now by Mark Searby, who's author of the book Rick Mayall, Comedy Genius. Morning to you, Mark. Just watching those clips, and there'll be a younger generation who are constantly finding Rick Mayall, won't there? There was something so special about that time and place and his kind of comedy.
Oh, absolutely, Charlie. That's the thing. There was, you're talking about new generations finding Rick. That's the beauty of his work, is that it has spanned all the time. That's rare. That's rare for any comedian who's alive, never mind about dead. So it's beautiful that people still find Rick's stuff funny.
Yeah, there's a sort of furious, wonderful slapstick element to all of that stuff he did, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Let's face it, look, I don't condone it, but being hit in the face by a frying pan is certainly harking back to Rick's work. And that it was just funny. It was over the top. It was slapstick. Him and Adrian Edmondson were masters at it. They loved Laurel and Hardy. They loved Tom and Jerry. And this was their real life version of it.
It was actually morning. It's Naga here, Mark. It was also really interesting because they could have just been silly, but they took on politics as well, didn't they? They took on kind of social issues, and
it's very much the real world. And there's a clip that always goes around on social media where it's Rick as Alan Bastard, where he's saying about, in the old days, you were poor, you got sick, you died. That continues to trend. So Rick has always been political in his work. He wasn't in his real life. He was very quiet about that. But his work always had that current of politics in there.
What do you think in terms of marking, commemorating, celebrating his life in Droitwich? What are you envisaging?
Well, I would love it to be like an entire weekend celebrating Rick's work, but also the influences as well. Rick's influences continue now. You look at a lot of stand-up comedians and also sitcoms that are on TV, and they're all influenced by Rick's work. So it would be nice for comedians to turn up, whether they're famous or not, whether they're starting out or whether they're at the end of their career. And it'd be wonderful for them to just come talk about Rick's legacy in there, but also do their own performances as well. You know, Rick, he did stand up. He did a couple of tours of stand up, but he wasn't known for stand up. He was known for sitcoms. He was known for obviously that anarchic behavior. But it would be nice to see how far his legacy spans. And I think with a comedy festival, certainly in Droitwich, which, you know, that was their family base, I think it's the perfect place. And so many people can get there. It's in the centre of the UK. I think it would be a marvellous idea. I really hope it's pulled off as well. And I just, you know, Rick's influence continues to this day. And this is just one of those legacies that I hope does go ahead.
Do you know what? I am old enough, Mark, to remember. Now I say I remember. I was reminded in that clip of that first character who did was the investigative reporter. And I remind me of the name, because I do remember
Kevin
that.
Turvey.
And it was, say it again.
Kevin Turvey.
Kevin Turvey. And it was a little bit of comedy genius in its own way. And that was the first time I ever saw him. And you kind of knew there was something a bit special going on, but it was very different from what happened later on.
Oh, absolutely. But that was the brilliance of Rick, is that Rick didn't know what to do for that audition. He was on the train and he had no idea what to do for the character. So he did it on the spot. It was improvised and suddenly it took off. And obviously it got you, Charlie. You know, you were hooked on it. And then years later, he was changing it up. He was playing, you know, Richard, or he was playing Filthy Rich and Catflap, or, you know, he was in Drop Dead Fred. So he was able to switch up loads of things. He did serious stuff as well. I think people forget that. The Rick Mayall Presents show, that was a very serious piece of work that he did. He did audio books as well. I mean, he narrated an audiobook for Evelyn Waugh. I mean, it's amazing, his career. He really was a master at just about everything, I think.
Do you think he'd have liked a statue of himself? I think he was
That's
that
a good
kind
question,
of person.
Mega. He would have loved a statue that's probably about 10 foot tall and about 10 foot in girth in the nether regions, because that was him. But in terms of a standard statue, I don't think so. No, I think he would have liked to have seen comedy continue in his name and whatever that influence would be. So I think this comedy festival is probably one of the best ways of honouring the man himself.
Mark Searby, author of Rick Mayall, Comedy Genius, perfectly titled book, may I say. Thank you so much for joining us here on Breakfast. Take care.
Maybe if it is a statue, each one should have a moving frying pan, you know, like with a whack.
Or you could just stand in the way of it.
That it moves all the time.